You're watching the Chucktown Wind Report Thursday night update for December the 3rd. Let's talk about your winds and weather for tomorrow and Saturday. A little bit on Sunday and into next week. We may have a little coastal event going on sometime next week. So let's get right into it. We have our surface map here. We have a very large dome of high pressure that's building in strength. Right now it's at 1,028 millibars. We should see that number climb to 1,040 as this high pressure scoots over the West Virginia area. And that is going to keep a north-northeasterly flow along our coastline. Right now we're seeing some higher elevations, some moderate elevations going on as this cloud deck behind this cold front that moved offshore last night sits over us, and it may sit over us through tomorrow. So expect some clouding tomorrow. That's going to keep the gradient enhancements up as that high pressure bites down into that mid-level troughing. That's what kind of creates our winds for the area, and that should last for several days. So looking at everything going on, all the criteria, I'm going to go ahead and call for 17 to 21 knots on the north-northeast flow for tomorrow and Saturday, and possibly slipping back to the north a little bit on Sunday. We could see some higher periods, especially in the afternoons when the air temperatures climb a little bit. We could see some of those directions lean northeast, and the periods of wind come up 20 to 24 knots with higher gusting. So be prepared to see winds possibly getting up near 30 miles an hour or even higher than that. Right now, the zone of gradient wind is right about here. It's reaching down into northern Florida. We're starting to see the gradient build over our area, especially with that cloud deck. This area down here for next week is what we're going to be watching. So if we look at the GFS modeling for it, I'm going to run that GFS and show you what I'm talking about. Now, when we talk about modeling for events down the road, they're not exact. They're not going to be perfect. We don't know if it's actually going to happen or not. But that along the tail end of that boundary, that front that's down over Florida, we see a low pressure develop and then slide to the north. So we can see it coming up the Florida coast right about here, and then out to South Carolina coast. And that's Tuesday next week. And as we go into the week, we see that low sliding up the coastline as a nor'easter and bombing out over the northeast United States. So that's all speculatory at this point, just an opinion from the GFS model. But we could see some of that affecting us as into Monday and Tuesday as that low pressure slides up into our area, if it does happen. Let's take a look at the Charleston area now. We see the gradient building down through the area. Winyah Bay is at 21 knots from the north right now. Offshore, Charleston Buoy is 18 knots from the north-northeast. 59 degrees out there. Near shore, 20 knots. We zoom into the Charleston area. You see a lot of Charleston right now in this direction is land shadowed. It's offshore winds. And we see Fort Sumter is 12 at north-northeast. The Folly Beach land shadowed is 12 knots. We have 7 knots out of the Palms, 5 knots at Sullivan's Island. And then the north tip of Folly Beach, probably the best place to be to catch the cleanest fetch for this direction of wind, is showing 15 knots. Probably higher than that in actuality based on that station where it is and how it's located. It's a little bit land shadowed itself, so we tend to add about 2 to 4 knots on top of this direction of wind from as far as speeds go. So if we look at Folly Beach, I picked Folly Beach for the details to go over for the model runs. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. And here's our model runs. Now, they're starting to spread a little bit on the speeds. I'm going to stick with the higher speeds. That gold line across the top is Wave Watch 3 model. That tends to be a little bit exaggerated, but it could be right. You never know. It might be the one lone wolf that is right on this one. I do tend to agree on a higher gradient and higher speeds with this type of wind, this type of direction. But sometimes it takes a northeast bend in the wind field, or even east-northeast, for it to really come up. So most models are in agreement with keeping this north-northeast, but if we see any of those bends, onshore bends to the northeast and east-northeast with any amounts of sunshine building in along the coastline, those little sea breeze oscillations, we could see those winds really come up to those 20-24 knot slots. And that goes for tomorrow and Saturday. Sunday, it looks like winds may slip back to the north a little bit and won't get any assistance from it. And if we look down here at the GFS, we show that on the GFS 0.5 degree. I'm going to sort of side with this one for now and say 17 to 21 knots, but then get those 20 to 24 knot gusts, gust periods during the afternoon. So that's going to be it for the Chucktown Wind Report. We should stay on the dry side, not seeing very much, even if we look at radar. Here's the cloud decking over the area from infrared. Water vapor loop shows the fine line of dry air holding to the west on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains. Nothing on visible radar for right now, not until maybe after the weekend. We may see some of that rain lift up from the north up into our area, but until then I'm not expecting very much at all, just some moderate to strong winds. And that will do it for the Chucktown Wind Report. Thanks for watching.